Nothing says ADHD like a coffee from 8 o'clock this morning. Hello. Today, I would like to talk to you about something that is very near and dear to my heart, vampires. One of those vampires that I love so much is Nosferatu, aka Count Orlok. Come along this journey with me as we dive deep into the history of film. It's really fascinating to think about the history of this film and how we almost didn't have it at all. Robert Eggers, he's been talking about making a film adaptation of Nosferatu since before he released The Witch. He actually translated the story of Nosferatu into a theatrical production when he was in high school, and he directed that. He credits that whole experience as the thing that made him want to become a director as his career. And I think that's really cool. Let's get into the history, shall we? We're going back to a sexier time. Oh, right. We're going to go back to the 1920s. According to the Library of Congress, it is believed that about 75% of all silent films have been lost to time. Just be anything from neglect to poor storage. Early film was also very, very flammable. So caused a lot of fires, a lot of it burned, taking some theaters with it. Basically anything that was around it, it kind of went up in flames. Nosferatu was almost one of these silent films that was lost to time, but it wasn't because of neglect. It wasn't because of poor storage. It wasn't because of fire. It was because of copyright infringement. Ooh, we'll get to that later. The person who we kind of owe all of this to is Albin Grau. Albin Grau was a German artist, occultist. He is also credited as the producer on this film, but really this whole project was his baby. He took on many different roles in the creation of this film, including artistic director, costume designer, and he's also the one credited with being the brains behind giving Count Orlok his classic look. Albin Grau was also a very accomplished graphic artist in Germany, and he designed a lot of the early posters for the film itself, and you've probably seen some of them. Now here's where things get interesting. Albin Grau claims that he took inspiration for this story from personal experiences while serving in the infantry during World War I. He was stationed in Serbia, and he has stories where he recounts that he was hearing different folklore tales from a local villager. And this person basically told him that there's a story about this person who was improperly buried, wasn't giving any rites or anything, and he came back from the dead to haunt his family because they didn't bury him properly. They ended up going to dig up the grave, and they found that this person was indeed not decaying at all. And of course, the logical explanation is vampire. He's hearing these stories about vampires. That's what he claims. They film this wonderful film. They're very proud of it, especially Albin Grau. He is very proud of this film, and he spends a lot of money marketing this film. A lot of money. There are rumors that he spent more money marketing the film than it actually took to make the film. All these parties, they start to get attention. One of the people that this gets back to is Florence. Florence was Bram Stoker's widow. Bram Stoker being the author of Dracula. Florence was actually living off of the royalties from Dracula after Bram passed away. She wasn't living an extravagant life. She heard that this German producer had taken it upon himself to basically steal the story, change a couple of names, change a couple of the facts, and call it something else. That did not sit well with her. So she hired a legal team, and she sued Albin Grau's production company for copyright infringement. This court battle lasted 3 years. It took 3 years for them to decide that, yes, Florence, you are in the right. They should not have stolen this story. So the German courts decided to rule in Florence's favor, and they ordered that all copies of Nosferatu be destroyed. Everything, they wanted it gone. But what they didn't know was that a couple of pirated copies had already made their way to the United States. Like Count Orlok himself, the pirated copies had stolen away to another country. Now, because of the legal battles, as you would imagine, Murnau, the director, wasn't really talking about this film a lot. He moved to the United States to later direct a very successful adaptation of Faust And unfortunately, he passed away in a car accident in 1931. He never really gave any interviews about Nosferatu because of the legal battles, because of everything that happened. The legal battle actually bankrupted Alban Grau's production company, so that was out as well. The pirated copies did survive, obviously. They actually fell into obscurity for a long time. It wasn't until the 1960s in the United States that some of those copies were found and viewed. So essentially what we have today, everything that we have, that we see when we're watching the 1922 version of Nosferatu, is basically spliced together from these pirated copies that were probably not stored correctly, that were maybe not very well taken care of. That's going to explain a lot of the colorization differences that you see when you're watching the film. In the 70s, the late 70s, a little director named Werner Herzog decided that he wanted to make another version of this story. At that time, the copyright for Dracula had expired, so it was public domain and nobody was going to be suing anybody over any sort of rights. So what we have in the Werner Herzog Nosferatu the Vampire, or Nosferatu Phantom der Nacht. Please excuse my German. This is a lovely VHS copy that has both the English and the German versions. In this version, he has changed the names back to more accurately reflect that of the Dracula novel. Another cool thing, in the year 2000, the millennium, the turn of the century, this little film came out, Shadow of the Vampire. This one is starring John Malkovich and Willem Dafoe, who is in Robert Eggers' version. He stars as Max Schreck, who was the original Count Orlok in the 1922 Nosferatu. It is about the production of the film itself. We have our actors playing the director and the actors and all that. They are making Nosferatu, but you know, some creepy things start to happen, so it is a little bit of a dramatized version of the story. But it's a great film, worth the watch nonetheless. The most complete, accurate restoration of Nosferatu that we have today was completed in 2013. In Murnau's Nosferatu, we have some really cool things that I just want to point out. The use of the calligraphic title cards, or the dialogue cards, that's an homage, actually, to the style of novel of Dracula, which was written as an epistolary novel. And that basically means that you have a story that is being told through a series of letters and documents. Letters that characters write back and forth to each other, documents that they uncover, like, you know, the Log of the Demeter. Unfortunate, which I think is a really cool nod to the original. Even though they stole the story, I think they gave a little nod. There are a couple of themes that I do want to talk about from Murnau's Nosferatu. 1922, come back in time with me. We're going back to the 20s. This was pre-World War II. They had just come out of World War I, which was the most devastating at the time. After World War I, we have Spanish flu pandemic. The world had just experienced complete devastation, especially Europe. Europe was heavily affected by World War I and by the pandemic. A lot of people were thinking about mortality. The things that were able to wipe us out as humans were so fragile. There was this fear of the time. Vampires have really had this evolution in literature, in film, and I think that's very interesting. So at this time, we're seeing somebody who is an outsider, somebody who is coming to a place that they're not from, where some people think they don't belong. We're seeing this person come in with a horde of rats, and they're bringing along with them plague and devastation and death. In the adaptations that we have so far, and no doubt in Robert Eggers' version, we're going to see the classic shot of the line of caskets and just this town mourning the loss of so many individuals. That brings me to the character design of Nosferatu. Germany, it's the 20s. This is, you know, Germany had taken a massive, massive hit after World War I. And we all know what happens during World War II and the years leading up to that in Germany. The kind of fear that was being perpetuated. The character design of Nosferatu himself, he's supposed to look like a rat. Most often we're associating vampires with bats. A lot of people call bats the rats of the sky. He's very rat-like, and he does come with a horde of rats when he comes to Germany. A lot of people look at Nosferatu and they see some not great things going on with the design and maybe what that was trying to convey, especially in Germany in the 20s. I think that's just really important to consider as we're looking at this piece of film history, kind of what that's saying about our society. I also just want to point out that vampires kind of became this entity that was synonymous with like the queer community. So we have these individuals who are living in these little pockets, these little groups of maybe found family. They are hiding. They are afraid to come out during the day. They have to wait till nightfall to come out. They have this affliction that is incurable and people are afraid of it because, oh no, don't let them get close to you. Don't let them touch you because you're going to get what they have or they're going to... I just think it's interesting now that we're getting another vampire story. What we're going through in this country with transphobia and this perpetuated idea that trans people are our enemies. I just want to say that I am very excited to see what Robert Eggers does with this film. I think the original is very atmospheric. The use of shadow and lighting are very specific to this film, and I think they add a lot, and they help really create that tension. And I know Robert Eggers is a huge fan of this, and I am so stoked to see what he does because I know he's going to do something great. Bill Skarsgård, we haven't seen any images of him. I know they're probably out there. I haven't done any digging, but I don't want to see them. I want to be surprised when I see a scary vampire on the screen. I'm very excited. I hope that this story continues to be told because it's so interesting. I love telling stories like this. I love learning about history of horror, especially when it comes to LGBTQ themes. I think a lot of horror films are a lot more gay than we think. I'll probably come back on here and do another video once I see Nosferatu and give my thoughts. I hope you all enjoy your screenings of Nosferatu. Until next time, stay spooky. Bye.